Hey. Welcome to episode
Hi.
133 of the Titanforge podcast. I'm Dratnos, joined by Tettles, and this week we have no Trell, but we have special guest, Corey May. Welcome.
Hi guys. Thank you for having
Some would
me.
argue that's even better than Trell.
Even equally
Well,
as exciting as
hope he
Trell.
doesn't hear that.
So this week we have Corey May on as healer expert, healer scientist, famed slayer, the banished one, tormented hero, healer, player. So we're going to talk about all things raid and M plus healing meta this season, because normally we don't have too much healers on our show because we hate them generally.
We are generally liable to just kind of make shit up with healing. This does check out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like that the meta is now shifting from hating healers and blaming healers, and now we're blaming warlocks and mages a lot more. So I'm really down for that. And moonkins. I like that that's going in that direction this expansion.
Yeah, Tettles, you've been a large part of that trend towards making everybody hate Moonkin as well. So I think we have you to thank somewhat for that.
Yes, thank you, Petals.
You're welcome for the innervate.
Okay, so yeah, Corey, what might people? I see you've got some YouTube content perhaps as well. Anywhere else you want people to
Yeah.
know about where to find you and stuff?
Yeah, I usually just stream on twitch.tv/Corme. I've been reviving my YouTube channel. I haven't been doing as much, but I'm going to try and get back into it and focus mostly on some Mythic Plus and maybe some raid content. And then, of course, I have Twitter and Instagram and all those other boring basic socials, of course. Oh, and this is my YouTube video, and you guys saw my cat in there. I was basically just going over. I like to do commentaries of Mythic Plus runs I do, just to give you like insight, like boss for boss and like pack for pack, like what your thought process is with like what buttons you're using where. I think those are really useful. This late into the expansion, I don't really go as much over mechanics and stuff like that because by now most people know them. But yeah, I think they're really fun to do like commentaries, and it's also really good to go back and look at your own VODs to learn what you did wrong and look back and be like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have done this. And it's really helpful as well.
You looking forward to the Dragonflight beta? You gonna do content? For
Oh
that too?
yeah, I am really excited. I'm super excited for the new talent trees. I'm really looking forward to because it looks like based on the preview that they gave for like Jude and stuff like that they're gonna do a lot more utility for healers and stuff like that. Like it looked like you can maybe get like a kick as a resident and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that kind of thing is a theme that we'll see across other healers going forward, and seeing like old talents get brought back and stuff like that. So it'll be really fun. I cannot wait.
Dradnus, don't you find it kind of funny how she believes she'll be able to spec into that interrupt whenever she's going to clearly be specking into all damage options?
Well, I hope that
I mean, the interval is good.
I hope they just put some really cool ability on the same choice as like power infusion, and just you watch healers just never ever get to play the fun ability and just always have to pick power infusion.
Okay, so we do hate healers. Okay, we
Yeah.
do hate healers here.
Oh yes,
Maybe this is why we don't have healers on that often.
Yeah.
it is rare that they agree to come on for a second time, but that's true.
It could be twice. Yep.
All right. We have some other small news, I guess, before we jump into the healer stuff. One is that the new affix is up on PTR. The shrouded affix. Tettles myself have played a little bit of it. It's basically just some of the mobs in the dungeons are actually dreadlords that don't give count, but do give you a stacking stat buff when you kill them. And yeah, by the end of the dungeon, you can have like 40% extra verse or haste or something, and that's kind of crazy. It'll be probably pretty good for high pushing. I don't know, Tettles, what do you think about the new affix from the playing we had of it?
I know numerically it's really strong. So like so it's a basic kiss curse affix, and you have to kill like the dreadlords. And I know numerically that it feels really strong. At the same point, if you told me that I had 30% haste at the end of the dungeon or whatever, I'd be like, wait, do I? Do I really? Or like 30% of a stat? And it's like the only way I can tell is by looking on the damage meter. So there is a level where like I know numerically it's broken, but I don't feel super broken at the end of the dungeon when I'm supposed to be. So I think that there's maybe something missing on that front. But at the same point, I think it's okay. I think it has potential if there's a couple of things that are changed. But overall, I didn't have too many complaints.
I liked it. I thought it was nice that it just kind of got out of the way, gave you a bunch of stats, and wasn't too, like, I don't know, painful.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the dungeon pool kind of sucks, but you know.
So that's the other thing about the dungeons, right? We know the season 4 dungeon pool. It's the 3 mega dungeons, Iron Docks and Grimrail Depot. I don't know how much you both have played going back to like Legion wads, those days. How does the dungeon pool strike both of you? I guess Corey, what do you think about? I guess the affix and or the pool.
I didn't play in WoD, so I know nothing about those dungeons except people said that it's like really tight. Like people were comparing Grimrail to like a Tol Dagor where like it's really tight and there's cannons that kill mobs again. So Tol Dagor was a fun dungeon. However, people were saying something like, oh, like Sanguine's gonna suck in there and stuff like that, which is a really good point. So I don't know anything about that. I played very, very little Legion. I liked the workshop dungeons. I kind of wish Streets was in there because a five boss dungeon with that much RP, I already do not like that dungeon. But other than that, I'm really excited. I don't really agree with all the negativity that people are saying, like, oh, it's like a smaller dungeon pool because right now we have 10 and we're going back down to 8. But I don't think it matters because we're getting new dungeons and it's an experiment. I really don't understand all the negativity around it at all because I don't want to do another 6 months of like Necrotic Wake and Plaguefall and stuff like that. I'd much rather go do something different, even if it's a little bit less fun. Yeah. And I do not understand the people saying like, I want to keep doing that. I'm like, that's okay.
Yeah. I agree.
Very weird.
I think the nitpicking too much around the dungeons is potentially pretty damaging because like we really want them to keep doing this going forward, and like the specific dungeons, like if we just keep doing this, they're gonna put Underrot, they're gonna put Plaguefall, they're gonna put they're gonna put Freehold, they're gonna put a Taldazar, they're gonna put everybody's favorites back in at some point. So, but hopefully they don't get too scared off if people are down on this one.
So they'll put back in Seed of the Triumvirate. I'm hearing. All right, I'm in.
Do you love Seed of the Triumvirate? Yeah. The other news is the Cryptic Hero title that is going to be not faction based anymore. So, and I assume that's going to be just going forward for all of them because of the cross faction stuff. So, I guess a couple of Alliance players aren't going to get the title this time, and a couple more Horde players are compared to if they hadn't made this change.
I think that's actually untrue because wasn't the Alliance cutoff like higher for some regions?
Was it?
For some regions it was.
Oh yeah, because their population was lower as well. Okay, I thought it was much lower for
Korea.
here.
I want to say it was like 200 points higher or something like that. There are some regions where it's a lot higher.
Okay, I was just thinking NA. Okay, let's go into main topic. Let's go talk about raid healer balance, which I don't know about you two, but for me, healer balance looked pretty nice except if you didn't look too hard at the like 4 holy priests on some fights, 3 holy priests on some fights. Jailer, my guild played 5 healers, none of them were duplicates. Some guilds were playing like 2 of 1, but basically everybody had a bit of a rainbow healer comp going on. Corey, how did healing balance strike you though this tier in raid?
I was really happy with how healer balance was. Like actually seeing like Resto Druid and Mistweaver coming in. Like of course we still had a lot of priests, but at least they weren't disc this time. Of course you always have the one holy paladin, and then I thought it was good. Resto Shaman was kind of all right. A lot of people were like, oh, they need to buff Resto Shaman. I think it's fine. I think it just doesn't fill like a niche, but it can fill in wherever you have gaps still. It's just like, it's like the same thing where it's like, it's not always the best at any one thing, but if you need to fill in a gap in your roster, I still think Resto Shaman's fine. And that being said, like every single healer has a spot this tier, and I absolutely love that. I hope they stick to that. I still think there's like some core problems with like healers like CDs and stuff like that, with some of them having DRs and externals that others don't have. But other than that, I think that this is by far the best they've done, and they also did a really good job of designing encounters that lean more heavily on needing throughput and not just DR, that allowed us to have a lot more of this like space, and also the ability to switch covenants also opened up a lot of space for different healers. Like I'm not sure how quickly we would have gone to I want to reword that. I want to say like in the past, maybe we would have seen more like holy priests and stuff like that if we'd had the ability to like switch covenants on past bosses and tiers and stuff like that as well. They did get a lot of like aura buffs going to this, but they've also always been pretty good at doing throughput healing when you need it on certain fights. So that kind of also opened up a lot more options for people. And so I'm really happy overall with how they did the healing balance.
What did you feel like? How did you feel about most of the bosses this tier being 5 healed? This was like an unprecedented amount of 5 heal fights. I felt like.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they're not 3 healed, I'm pretty happy. I think I'm personally really happy that they're all 5 healed. It was a struggle for my guild because we only had 5 healers, and then we lost one, and then we lost another one, and we were scrambling to put it together. Yeah,
so
but
Holy Paladin prison, right?
yeah, I had to switch halfway through the tier off of Resto Shaman. And then I almost had to switch for Jailer as well, but we just decided to do double Holy Paladin, which like nobody else was doing. It worked fine though. But yeah, I 5 healers. I don't think it's like, I wish there'd just be more consistent, because I think that having a healing roster, I know we said something about like should guilds have 6 healers and stuff like that. I think that having an extra healer on your roster all the time gets really toxic really fast, because with like DPS, it's a lot more common for your like how many melee and how many range and stuff like that you want per like fight are getting switched around. But like with a healer, most of the time you're probably just gonna have that one healer who's just sitting the whole time, and then that healer is like, I don't want to be here anymore, I want to play, because the healer meta doesn't usually change throughout the raid as much. It usually stays like pretty constant for every single boss, whatever healer is good. So it's kind of like a thin line to walk, where it's like, I think there should, I like the metas where there's usually like 1 5 heal, maybe 2 5 heal fights inside of a raid, and then most of them are just 4 heal for the most part. But yeah, I do like how much emphasis there was on healing. This is the first time since I've started playing, because I started playing like early BFA, like and started reading stuff like that, that I've seen a tier that leans so heavily on healers, and like your healing actually mattered for your procs. In the past, it didn't always feel like that, I don't think. And so that made this tier really fun for healers. I think most people would agree that do heal, and maybe the people who don't have good healers in their guild don't agree. But
it definitely felt like this tier, at least boss wise, there was a lot of healing checks. There was a ton of healing absorbs on some of these fights too, where it's like I felt like if you didn't have just good healers that set up their cooldowns correctly, you were gonna have a bad time, specifically in Mythic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it also felt like there's kind of the ability for healers to carry in a way that they, like, if you were progressing Jailer and there was just somebody bombing the raid every pull, like in my guild, you could have healers actually carry through that, which almost everybody was a was a menace with those bombs, and we were just getting hit like 3 times per phase 1, but the healers could get through it, which I feel like is something where usually you wouldn't have that ability for like the difference between like a good and a great like healer core to really be felt, except in like you'd see it in like world first guilds where they're just criminally under healing everything, and and you'd be like, oh my god, that's really impressive. But then you'd get to content later and it's just like, well, we have to have this number of healers because of the healer cooldowns they bring, and the actual amount of throughput healing required is less than the amount that they're able to put out, right? But here it just felt like kind of you could scale that up, and there was just always something that needed to get healed.
Yeah, I think that like Regolon was the first boss fight I felt like in a long time that felt like you were just like kind of like I don't think I've really seen that since like Orgazoa, where it felt like there was like a lot of like triage healing and just like a constant amount of healing that I don't think we've seen in a long time, that actually feels really fun as a healer, like terrifying but very fun. Because most of the time it feels like a lot of these healing checks just come down to like there is just like this 15-second window, we're taking all this damage and we need to live, we need to get top before this and stuff like that. But actually having fights that feel like way more like triage, I definitely like, and I think makes more fun. And it just seems like they switched up the kind of style of healing. They also added 2 bosses this tier that were similar to Sun King, where you had to heal ads and stuff like that. I think most healers agree that they don't like that. Maybe I'm wrong if someone disagrees, but I don't think anybody likes just having to heal up NPCs, especially when the way that Blizzard lends their UI, or at least they did this tier, hasn't been very friendly to that for a lot of people. So yeah, for the most part, outside of the healing the ads, I'm pretty okay with it.
How was Jailer then for healers? Because you referenced Ragolon with having a lot of triage healing. I feel like Jailer also had a ton with like blood soak groups and chain baits and stuff like that, or did it feel a little bit less?
I wouldn't call that triage healing. I would call that more like just like priority healing on a few people. Like,
okay.
Yeah, just like because you're just making sure people are topped enough to go into tournaments to live, and then like just like healing a few people that are taking a blood soak for like 10 seconds. I wouldn't call that triage healing necessarily. I do think it was fun healing off like the absorbs and stuff like that. I think phase 1 that if we hate line of sight mechanics, please add something to our frames so that we can see. Because when I'm sitting there, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna light a monitor this boom kid. Okay, I can't get him. The DK can't get him. Get him. And then like by then, I've just spent 5 globals trying to heal people, and I just did 0 healing. I just want to die. So if they can please add something so we can see.
In World of Warcraft, of course.
Yeah. In game, of course. But yeah, like it's really, really frustrating as a healer. I wish they would have put phase 1 and phase 3, because like I didn't want to have to pull phase 1 that many times because it was so tilting. Like after even
Yeah.
like when you get past like 250 pulls, you're still getting tilted every time it happens, and it happens quite often. So yeah, other than that, I think healers would have liked the fight a lot more, other than having to deal with the line of sight mechanics, of course.
That's fair.
Yeah, but yeah, it was a fun fight. I don't think healers had that much of like a different experience than like DPS did on that fight. Like the reasons they liked and disliked it. It was okay. But yeah, I definitely think that like Ragallon, Lords of Dread were more fun as a healer for this tier. Definitely Ragallon than Jailer was.
Ragallon, I think, was the best fight of the tier. Yeah, I think that might be one of the best fights they've ever made. That fight is just so like, it's so good, and there's so little like
it's really well balanced,
slack in there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really fun.
Anduin was also. I thought Anduin was also kind of a banger.
I feel like I don't know. Anduin just felt like you just need to figure out where your CDs go, and then the boss plays itself. Yeah, it didn't really feel like a fun like mechanic prog fight. It's just like, okay, you put this there, and I'll put this there instead, and it'll be fine. Like,
I mean, they're very different bosses. One of them is a coordination check, and Ragallon is just
like 7 minutes of white knuckle driving, you know?
Yeah, I want that every time. That's what I want every time.
Yeah.
Want to feel something.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to feel something. Yeah.
Pulls Ragallon.
All right. So going back to the discussion of like number of healers, I think it's an interesting thing because like going into next expansion after a tier like this, where like most bosses are 5 heal, and some guilds 6 heal, especially guilds that are reaching like Ragallon with 6 good healers on the roster, I think are just doing that now, and it's looking pretty good.
Even after the nerfs, really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, at this point you could just do either, but it was mostly before the nerfs was before the nerfs, but like after we did a lot more damage. I knew there were guilds that like started doing that and were saying it made it a lot easier. So I don't know. My guild's also on 5, and it does feel we were on 5. We recruited another to go up to 6 so that we can be like a little bit more ready for a tier where it's like always 5, and therefore you're not just like kind of at the whim of like if one of them's missing, if one of them is AFK, bad internet, that kind of thing. But I don't know. I kind of agree with you that like I hope that either we have that again, because it would feel really bad if we went back to 4 healing and we had 6 healers on the roster, right? Like that would be that would be pain.
It's like having 3 tanks on your roster, by the way.
Exactly.
That's literally the equivalent of having 3 tanks on your roster, and one of them is like, when am I supposed to be the boss?
Yeah. I think like ideally you can get someone who is like can heal and DPS, and they're good at both. I mean, like that's kind of asking a lot of someone to be able to do both those roles, but ideally I think I would rather have a 6th person, like 5 main healers, and then a 6th person who can like heal and DPS, although they wouldn't be able to maintain as many healer characters or something like that, just to make it less toxic for them. Because being in that situation like really sucks when it turns out your class isn't meta and you want to reroll, but like the other people are already maining the ones that are good, and so now you're behind and you're just not going to get to play. Basically, it's so awful for them because like you say like, oh, it could be a 4 heal meta, but like I also think back to like EP where like 2 of the best fights in that raid were 3 heal fights, like Ashara and Lady Ashbane were 3 heal fights, and we had 1 5 heal fight, and the rest were all like 4, and most of the rest of that, outside of the second and last boss, most of the rest of that tier was like less than 20 pull bosses. And so like if you had 6 healers on your roster, 3 of them would have been sitting for about 50% of prog.
I mean, this
and that would be awful. Yeah.
This is the danger of 3 heal fights too. Like being really popular is like, well, I mean, Castle Nathria also had a lot of 5 heal bosses, didn't it? It had like 2. It had like 3 or 4 in like a 10 boss raid instances, which is generally a lot.
Yeah, it was Council, and then it was SLG and Sun King. Yeah, but like, so SLG was a pretty large pull boss and stuff like that. But yeah.
Oh man, another day where I've been reminded of SLG.
Yeah,
it's one of those things too that like if 30% of your bosses are 5 healed, like you can start to run into issues, because like you would really like a 6 healer at that point, and then you have a Nerva, you have like a Nerva, or like this year you have Lahuvum, which are both of those fights are just 3 heal fights, and you're like, well.
Yeah, it's okay every once in a while. I just
healers. You're like, oh shit.
I think as long as it's just never the main fights, like the reason I brought up EP is because both the main fun fights that people remember when they think of EP, not fun fights, nobody likes Ashara, but the main fights that you frogged inside of EP were Lady Ashbane and Ashara. And
Yeah.
the only, like, and so when you think about that, and it's like, well, both those were 3 heals, it kind of like sucks looking back on it as a healer and looking at the tier, like what you got to play. You're like, yeah, I got to play Orgazoa and Queen's Court a bit, so just it's so wonky. But yeah, I think the best solution is hopefully you can find someone that can DPS and heal equally as good, but probably maybe be a bit better at DPSing, and then they just have like a viable healing off spec to fill in that gap. Yeah, I wish it would be a bit more consistent on what we're doing.
Yeah,
I definitely wish we knew in advance, like, what you like. I wish there was something clear from PTR testing how many healers you would like to run, because you never really know until you watch the race roll first, and then you can kind of be like, oh, okay, so this is how many healers are probably going to be ran on this fight.
Yeah, it's pretty unpredictable until you see them do it, and even then, I could still manage a 4 heal Regulon somehow. So
Unbelievable.
yes.
All right. Speaking of, I guess, raid CD timings, which was how Echo managed to 4 heal Ragallon, how does one prepare for healing these, in a cutting edge mythic environment for different raid encounters? Like, what's your process for if you're going into a fight like Jailer or like Ragallon on some healer, especially? I mean, you said going into Jailer as a double Holy Paladin and potentially not even having logs to look at how double Holy Paladin, like a blueprint of what might work on that kind of encounter. What do you do going into those sorts of fights to figure out what your plan's going to be?
So mostly, like, you're always at the luxury of looking at world first guild. So like when we were looking at it, so we had a Resto Shaman. So I see Theon in chat, so we were looking at what Theon was doing because he was like the only Resto Shaman that had killed it. And then we had double Holy Paladin, and Club Camel had done it with double Holy Paladin. So we kind of looked at them a little bit. So you kind of have to like pick and choose like who you're going to and who you're looking at for like their timings and stuff like that. But for the most part, it is just you looking. For the most part, you want to look at like a stream of someone who's playing your role, and you want to study what they're doing, even if they don't have your same exact timings. Depending on the healer you are, I think for the most part, this tier, unless you were like a Resto Druid or like a Disc Priest, you don't really have like ramp timings and stuff like that are like super important anymore. So for the most part, you just like put down like random stuff and stuff like healing, like Holy Priesthood is always healing and stuff like that. But yeah, you do look at their timings. You talk to your other healers. Most of the time, you have a healer who's making the spreadsheet. Sometimes you're the healer making the spreadsheet. You just want to take down the timings. And then I usually like to copy another guild's timings when I'm doing it, and then go through and try and fill in those gaps where you need it. Put like a DR where they had a DR, put throughput where they had throughput, kind of thing. It's just the best way to do it. And then after you do the first like night of prog, you go back and you look at your healing, see where people are dying, look at what they were doing in place of that so those people weren't dying. And it's just like a big back and forth of watching other people and trying. And like I said, we had to look at, most of the time you're going to have to look at multiple guilds because you're not going to have the exact comp that they did, and take little bits and pieces from both of those in order to make up for wherever they had CDs that you don't. Yeah, that is basically how you do it. There's also some really useful spreadsheets. I cannot remember the name, that already just have like the timing just like plugged in there for you to plug and play, and they're in most of the healer discords right now.
I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, it's really useful though. It's really useful. So if you're like someone who does that for your guild, I'd highly suggest, Viserios. I highly suggest looking into that because that does half the work for you.
Yeah, okay. Ooh. If we can find a link to it, maybe we'll put it in the description or something. Okay, how about when you are having trouble with something, like when you're getting to a point and there's just, 5 people die at the same point, you get there again, 5 people die again. How do you go about figuring out, like, first of all, like, is this a healer problem, or is this something that the players need to play something differently on? Do DPS need to use defensive here? Is this some kind of movement problem? How do you go about identifying and fixing those sorts of problems in progression?
You basically use the same tools I just talked about for when you prepare. Is that you go and you look and you see what other healers are using in those places to make them safer. You go and look and see what defensive they're using. Hopefully there's a public log by the time you're there, and you can go see how those other people were like basically just living. And then for the most part, when those things don't work, you just end up moving your healing cities around a lot. Like that's something you do, like, oh, okay, let's put your Trank here and I'll move my Tide here because your Trank is more powerful and stuff like that. Let's like position this person over here. Let's have this person soak this instead. Like random things like that. But you don't ever want to move. You want to change things one at a time. That's like the most important thing when you're trying to figure this stuff out, is that like you only want to change one thing at a time, even though it's a bit slower. Otherwise you end up moving too much and you're not really finding like the root of the problem and stuff. I think like stuff like that was pretty common. Having to move CDs around and stuff like that, it was probably pretty common for people on Anduin and for people on Jailer, because Anduin is a lot about just like rationing out your CDs for barriers and adds downstairs and making sure that when you're in the other phase, you're going to have enough healing to do one or the other. So that's where you find yourself rationing out CDs a lot. And same thing with Jailer for figuring out like CDs for making sure the people that the blood soaks are getting enough healing. That has a lot to do with like positioning and stuff like that. So yeah, it's basically just changing one thing at a time. And what's really different about healing compared to DPSing is that you need to be friendly with your other healers and you need to talk to them a lot. Because like DPS, like you guys never talk to each other about your healing CDs except for like a little bit like, oh, where are you incarnating, like and stuff like that, because you don't care that you guys are both doing damage at the same time. But when you're healing, you definitely care, and so you're working together and you're also competing against each other in a way at the same time. So it's really important as a healer that you get out of the mindset that you're competing with your other healers to do the most healing instead, and talk to them so you can figure out how to do the least amount of healing possible in each spot in order for everyone to live. That is basically the end of the game.
How did an ability like Symbols of Hope like change this tier? Because that I feel like that ability is giga broken. By the way,
it is. Yeah.
Sure that something like that. I'm sure something like that made it really difficult to kind of understand where people are going to have defensives and whatnot, right?
So yeah, if my guild had more than one priest, we maybe would have had this problem as well, where we couldn't figure it out. But since we only had one to ever have to do the math with, we didn't really run into this problem. But yeah, like if you have a guild with like 4 of them, and you're just like, okay, so there's all these damage events that are 1 minute apart, and we have 3 symbols of hope. We can just symbol of hope each time, and everybody's going to get their defense back each time for every single damage event and stuff like that is extremely broken, especially when some people have like really strong defensives. Some don't have as good a defensives. But yeah, making sure that everybody is always having their CDs back and stuff like that. So it definitely complicates things. It also complicates things because a lot of DPS don't realize that they're getting their defensive back when you're pressing Symbol of Hope. And you're looking and being like, oh, we symboled, so you could have barked, or you could have walled there, or just done whatever. But they didn't do it because they didn't realize, oh, my CD just got reduced a bunch, and so now I've already got it back. So yeah, it
would never be the DPS's fault.
Yeah, it would. it's definitely something that, like in prog, we would have to like point out, like, oh, you should be getting your wall back for this, or something like that. I think it was something that we, like my guild, definitely underutilized as far as like when we were planning out, because like we do like when we do defensive, we'll say like, okay, health pot here, health stone here, press your wall here, and stuff like that. And where people press their wall is always kind of a little iffy because everybody has like different CDs and stuff like that. But for other guilds, I'm sure they did a much better job of being vocal about that and telling them, hey, you're getting your wall back, or you're getting this back, and you need to press it when that happens. Especially when you have multiple holy priests.
I have a weak core, and every single time it pops up, I instantly press bark skin, and then I'm like, oh, good, thank you for the free bark. Don't mind if I do.
Well, yeah, because yours it just instantly resets it, right? Yeah.
Yep, it's instantly reset. I'm like, all right, I will take this. Don't mind if I do.
Yeah, it just depends on what you have and stuff like that. For like obviously like Hunter, it's like a lot less good. I think on most fights,
broke.
We were playing double beacon, and there was always a beacon on our Hunter because we had 2 paladins and stuff like that. But yeah,
we only had one paladin, and like the beacon went off of me onto the Hunter on Jailer.
That checks out.
Yeah. Our DK also did not have a beacon on him. It was all on our Moomkins and Hunters.
God, we hate those classes.
Yeah.
God, I wish I could get a beacon.
Okay, sorry, Tuttle's like, cut you off there. Were you asking something?
Oh, doesn't Rogue get File CD reduction or something?
I think so, yeah. Crimson File?
Crimson File, yeah.
Yeah. I know that Hunter gets Exil, right?
Yeah, Hunter does get Exil, and it is awful, by the way.
Ooh, big heal when they're already dead.
Yeah, but to be fair, there's not really any other buttons that... I guess it could give Turtle back sooner, but other than that, it's like, what else could it give?
I don't think that anybody would complain, oh man, my Hunter got Turtle back sooner. This is way too overpowered. Maybe it would be OP in like one situation, but very infrequently would it be something that's really broken.
Well, yeah, but the main thing is there's not like an Astral Shift or a Barkskin or whatever that it can give them. Like the Hunter toolkit does not include something good.
It should though. Hopefully they fix that.
Yeah, put it in a talent tree.
Yeah, that'd be sick.
All right. Before we go on to M plus, do you have any desires or things you'd like to see change for? Besides, we talked a little bit about the number of healers thing, so we don't need to cover that again. But just about the way healing played, have you liked the shift from, I guess, last expansion to this one, and from the last couple raids to this one, or is there anything about how healing is played out in raid that you'd like to see change?
I would really like them to take a look at how damage reduction plays a role. Even though like this is the first tier in the 2 expansions I've played where it felt like damage reduction was like not everything. Like we had priest playing holy instead of disc and stuff like that, and like only one paladin for the most part. But for the most part, if you look over the past like 4 years, the thing that has really dominated is how damage reduction plays a role. And I would really like them to take a look at either giving most healers a form of like damage reduction, or just taking away other healers' forms of damage reduction, because that is predominantly the thing. Like I don't think I've ever seen a boss kill since I started in BFA that didn't have a holy paladin in it, even when holy paladin was absolutely awful because they just had the button AM. So like things like that are just egregious. I think that's the reason like we haven't seen like Rusted Druid and Mistweaver and Holy Priest making like a play until now, is because of that. It's just that this tier they did a really good job of making healing more important, with like healing absorbs and just like putting damage on like a few key targets and doing constant like healing you need to do and stuff like that, that made it a lot more favorable. Whereas I feel like most of the time the fights in the past have been a lot like Dreadlords, where you just have like this one like phase where there's just a bunch of damage, and so damage reduction is just so king. So either they need to like stick to more of like the problem is sticking more to like what they did this tier, where there's like more spread out healing, is that now that these classes that have the DR, they didn't put Disc and Holy Paladin in the ground. Like they still do a lot of healing, but most people will agree that those healers feel a lot worse to play. But that's what they had to do to their healing in order to account for the damage reduction they're bringing. And I just feel like there's no winning when you're only giving a couple of the healers the ability to do this. Is that you just either make it so it's impossible to bring the fun healers, or you just don't get to have fun on your damage reduction healers. So I'd really like for them to take a really long, hard look at that, so that everybody, oh yeah, make your shows HBS.
I swear, yeah, just put it on the details meter, and that was how that was how they got Spell Reflect fixed, right? As soon as details put Spell Reflect on the damage meters, all of a sudden that first boss of Underrot stopped one-shotting itself.
Would at that point, would you like make Link show up on the damage meter then as well, with like the DR component of it? Same with like
yeah. I mean, like just having. I don't know if they should ever put just like the 3% from Devo Aura on there, but maybe they should consider it. But like, but really they should, like things like that. But yeah, it's just. I mean,
it's basically an absorb shield for a certain amount of the incoming damage. Like, yeah, it should absolutely show up.
It would show up as an absurd amount of HPS on your meter.
What would happen if they showed Chaos Brand on the damage meter, by the way? Then you'd realize that your singular Havoc Demon Hunter is doing 3k DPS more than the rest of your raid.
Yeah, I mean, show it. Put it on there. I don't know. You gotta shine a light on these things to get them fixed.
Well, yeah, that's my biggest hope, that they really take a long, hard look at that in the next expansion, because I think that would make it so we see a lot more healer variety balance each tier. Because I think this tier was kind of a one-off in the past 4 years. This is the first time we've seen this. But unless they're really on top of their encounter design, it's going to be this bad. And like I said, I don't think I've seen a lot of choice Holy Paladins who I don't agree with complaining about how bad they are, because they're still very good, but they still don't like how it plays, so it's not fun for anyone.
All right, we'll move on to talking about Mythic Plus next, but first we get to do our tip of the week segment. My tip of the week is for Anduin, which comes from a friend of the podcast, Corey, a different Corey, one from my guild, who says that you can stun immune the Anduin intermission walls with either like if you've got Fleshcraft and you're playing Plague Divisor, right, and you go stun immune, or I think even other stun immunities would work on this as well. And apparently it stops the damage instance as well, because that's all part of the stun. So if you're on Anduin and you're like baiting and you're a Necrolord, apparently you could just tap the Fleshcraft button as the wall's walking through you and be all good. So, and even if the damage goes through it, it doesn't kill you either. So
All right, I'm gonna start playing Necrolord Moonkin on Anduin. That seems really, really strong. Good.
Yeah, good hack, good hack.
Yeah. You're trying to avoid not killing the ad because your Moonkin keeps dying. Instead, try not killing the ad because your Moonkin doesn't have a ramp.
Yes, really normal.
All right, Corey. I see you've got two things listed here. One of them's called.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so the first one is like I saw your Anduin thing and that reminded me of a fun prank. If you are a subtlety rogue on Anduin, when you go down and you press Shroud, it shrouds the ads so your healers can't heal them, which is a fun prank you can play on your healers. And our rogues played on us a couple times.
What? Very quirky and cool.
Very fun. Yeah, it was really fun. Anyway, so if you want to try that on Tuesday, go for it. And then my other is also, it's a clip that I also stole from Corey's channel.
Same Corey. Yeah.
Yeah, same Corey. I stole this clip. I asked his permission, but I saw it when I was watching him, and I didn't have a clip of it myself. So, if you kill the woe after you kill Halkias, you can go, and you're the Venthyr, you can go and get this gargoyle for free. You just have to make sure the other guy is padded far enough away. And then once you take him, he'll be in the low shroud, so you can always take it to second boss. You don't have to rely on like the pat. It doesn't matter if the other gargoyle is active or anything like that. Just as long as you kill Will, you can always get that gargoyle for free.
Yo, what the hell? All right, that's OP.
Yeah, it's really strong. So you should always kill Woe. And nobody's playing rogues anymore, so now you're always killing Woe anyways.
What the hell? That thing is OP. Oh shit! Nope, linked the wrong clip. Whatever.
What? Oh yeah. You got the other one. Yeah.
Somebody
one
link in chat. I linked the wrong one.
The one you just linked is your clip of the week,
whatever,
which is
it's fine.
less educational and more entertaining. Whoop.
Dude, okay, so I've seen this multiple times from different people. Has anybody figured out what causes it yet?
No, I mean we Prada and I, the rogue in this one, we're the only ones that live in California, so we just decided that it was punishing us for living in California, and it decided to fund both of us.
Oh, are you? Is your server an East Coast server now?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, pain. That's probably it. That's probably got to be it.
I don't think that's it. I've seen it happen to like a lot of people, but a lot of people it was like when you're phasing. Or I can't remember what the timing was, but that was the first time we saw it with that timing.
Yeah, like usually if you start the jump off the jailer platform, even if you then get grip back, you'll still like insta jump from really far away. But I've never seen it without the like running to the edge first, which neither of you had done that. So
I actually think it's something to do with that. I think it's something to do with like Spear of Bastion and like server desync, and it believes that your position of your character is somewhere that it's not, and then it's like, oh, time to jump off, and then it just takes you to the edge, and you just get launched off.
Yeah.
All I know is that at that point it was like my second MC, and I was just saying in chat, I was like, I want to die, I want to die, I want to die, and then it did that to me. I was like, oh, okay.
World War
Wish granted.
World of Warcraft.
And wish was granted, yeah.
Interesting when you look at healing logs on the jailer is that you don't realize that so many of the top healing logs are the top healing logs actually because whenever you get MC'd, it's like a major pad for your healing meter because it counts the healing you do after the MC towards your healing, which is crazy. So like healer logs on the jailer are like really deceiving once you start looking at that.
But speaking of logs for a second, have you guys seen all of the Chinese RMT pilots lately?
I've seen them on Twitter. Yes.
Holy moly! Hold on.
Yeah, this is damage on jailer mythic right now rankings.
I'm linking something in our document too, dude. Okay. Like, look at this. Look at this log link. It is unbelievable. I don't know what Blizzard needs to do, but they have to stop these pilots. Like, nobody has 16 accounts worth of characters to kill the jailer with. That's not a thing. They're clearly piloting accounts.
You're not doing 16 mythic jailer splits at this point, Tettles? Come on, the tier's been out for like 4 months.
Click on the kills. There are VODs. There are literally VODs of people logging into accounts using my slot, importing their keybinds, and then after the kill, they use my slot, they re-import the other person's keybinds and log out. There are actual VODs on Douyu of people doing this.
Wow.
Okay,
I have no idea what they can do about this, but
yeah. Oh yeah, you're okay. There's
really normal. Very fog.
Yeah,
they only have Brewmaster books and Blood DKs. I wonder what happened with that.
Yeah, It's I guess yeah. Normally, if you were doing splits, you'd have some other types of tanks and healers, but I don't know. Maybe they're just getting gearing up for some sales. You know, just gearing some characters. Just love raids so much. Make some more characters. Do some more raids. Who's to say?
Yep. Really, really cool. Yeah, I don't know. Blizzard needs to certainly do something about these character pilots right now. It's off the chain.
I wonder how much there were some allegations that the Hall of Fame was being filled up as well with some of the guilds involved in this. Do you how much do you think that's going on there? I don't know anything about, like I actually don't know anything.
I at least think at some level it probably happened, but in reality, I mean the Hall of Fame was not getting filled up by a ton of dude. If you look at how many jailer kills there was like 500 jailer kills or something like that, where if those were all legitimate runs or something like that, you would have just infinite Hall of Fame filled up. Yeah. So I don't think it's happening, at least on that level. I suspect at least at some point they're kind of filling up the Hall of Fame with some RMT, but it's not like...
I've heard the tinfoil that they were waiting to start until after the RMT filled up, or until the Hall of Fame filled up, because last tier there was bans. The guilds that did RMT into the Hall of Fame got banned and removed from it.
We liked those ones though, because they filled up the Alliance one for us.
That's true.
That was a banger.
We gotta leave them alone until they're done with filling up the Alliance Hall of Fame, so we can play cross faction or cross region.
The one upside, is that they fill up the Alliance Hall of Fame for us.
Yeah, definitely, it's not happening yet, right? That's all the. At least there's only 12 guilds on the Alliance Hall of Fame as of right now, and they all seem legitimate.
And there was only like 140 or 150 guilds on the Horde Hall of Fame, so it wasn't one of those things that they clearly weren't filling it up like at the level of how many times they were killing the boss. But if I had a suspicion, I would at least guess that some of them were probably like not legitimate.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know too much about it, but it does seem, especially with the way that log is awful suspicious, for sure. It does probably warrant an investigation.
It's not just like, oh, they did one jailer split. They did 16 kills, man.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that you could just look and see if those characters are linked to the same BattleNet as well, and if they're not, then like, why are they all on the same log upload? Why are they all in the same combat log file? Kind of curious for sure. Yeah. Anyways, not the topic of our show, but interesting to bring up for sure. Let's talk about Mythic Plus healer balance, though, an equally exciting topic, where I think compared to Raid, Mythic Plus healer balance is, I would say, a little bit less good this tier, but also better than many.
Actually.
Okay.
Okay, if we look at the top 5 healers right now.
Fair.
No, look at the top 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty good.
Different ones.
Yeah, 4 different healers in the top 5. I am noticing. Okay, there's a lot of priests, but I don't think any of them are playing disc.
Yeah.
And I do not see any of the the teal class. But yeah, that's true.
4 out of 6, way better than anything I've seen before. Granted, I will say. Yeah, the whole.
Okay, better than season 2 Shadowlands for sure.
Holy Paladin.
Better than season 1 Shadowlands, I will give you. Okay, all right, I'm on board. This is a good season.
It's better than this.
I was more saying like slightly worse than Raid, where Raid was like especially good this tier, but yeah, definitely overall pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a little deceiving. Paladin isn't actually the top. It's actually Xaylia. It's just that Xaylia always plays his Resto Shaman whenever he's in halls. So he would be first. However, he's in 9th right now because he has only 15s for his halls right now because he always logs onto his Resto Shaman.
Oh, that is quite impressive.
Yeah. So that's the only.
That he's at 9th without a halls. Wait.
Yeah, pretty much. So and then, so like we're seeing some weird like things where people are having to play multiple characters. So Thaner is doing so well because instead of logging onto his Resto Shaman, Wildy logs onto his mage whenever they do halls. And then as far as like why the Holy Paladins are doing so well, I think there's a few reasons. I think part of it is that both those teams are doing the MDI, so they're not playing as much. And then also, Holy Paladin, we've had like the best. It's kind of hard to predict the meta when you haven't had like a full rotation yet, and also when people are doing prog. But since like the best week so far, and we haven't had the best fortified week yet, has been a tyrannical week. Holy Paladin does extra well during tyrannical just because they can live, especially when you look at like bosses inside like Leader of Pain and stuff like that. There are things that just priests really struggle with in there, so you might see them like pulling ahead especially during those kinds of weeks. But I think we have like a pretty fun season ahead of us. I hope it doesn't just turn into all priests. I hope that it manages to stay this diverse the whole time. But yeah, it's hard to say that, like I said, because these people are doing MDI and people are logging on multiple characters, and so we're not seeing like the true score from people. And also, we haven't had all of the like best weeks come up yet, so it might change quite a bit next week. Not next week, but the week after.
Are you not worried that Holy Paladin may take over our Shaman and H Priest? I know, because I know it's some.
No, I am, because I think that DPS is not as impactful this time. It's going to be a lot more about being able to survive a lot of these. And like Holy Paladin damage is a lot worse than it was, but doesn't mean it's bad. And for the most part, you don't actually need the damage. Like most of the keys you see depleted if you've been watching streams, it's not like, oh my god, we only had like 3 deaths and we still didn't time because of DPS. It's always like, we had like 17 deaths to like some clown fiesta, and like it's like, but like as long as you like have a clean run, like you usually time a lot of these keys with a lot of times. There's just so much damage with how DPS are right now and stuff like that, and healer damage, like I think in like the ratio in comparison to like the DPS right now is especially like low compared to how it used to be. That may not be true once you start looking at PI, but as you can see, like those paladins are both doing really well. The paladins are also playing it's interesting because both the Chinese teams are playing Holy Paladin and Vengeance Demon Hunter. So, and then most of the priests are playing Priest and Blood DK. So where the Paladin is lacking in like the AoE damage, the Vengeance Demon Hunter is making up for it. And then kind of like the vice versa with like the Priest and like the DK. So they kind of like balance each other out, whichever one you do. There's also been people running like Priest and Vengeance Demon Hunter. I hope we don't have a Vengeance Demon Hunter meta, because I don't like healing those things. They're so scary, especially on single target with Tyrannical. But yeah, so I think it's be interesting seeing different healers based on if it's Tyran or Fort, different tanks based on whether it's Tyran or Fort, and then of course we have this can of worms where you need curse spells and stuff sometimes as well. So I think we might see a lot of things like what Zalia is doing right now, but we might see like even a bit more split the higher we get into tyrannical keys, if priests can't keep living on some of these bosses and you don't need the DPS, so then you switch to something tankier. Like even a Resto Shaman is, I think a Resto Shaman falls kind of in between right now, and a little bit like a Resto Druid. I honestly haven't spent that much time watching Resto Druids play, I'm gonna be honest. But yeah, Roybin is doing pretty well, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, I like the idea of a season where the top healers are swapping around, but then where some of them are, but some of them are also just like playing one, and that's working as well. So I do like that. Yeah.
Well, that, I don't know. You definitely run into an issue if you feel like you're obligated to swap around a bunch too. It's one of those things that like it is good, but at the same point there is like pretty big downsides to it.
I like it if it's a good strategy you can use, but not one that you have to use, which it kind of seems like it is here, right? Like Thanor's not doing it, Zalia is.
Well,
right?
yeah, but no, Thanor's not doing it because Wildy's having to do it.
Right, like, so somebody's having to do the curse of spell swap. That's true. Yeah.
So like they can take turns, of course, and they can both get their score. So like in that kind of instance, it's good. But yeah, we're seeing like a good I think I think the Holy Paladin comp and the Priest comp that we're seeing are both like pretty different, because like the Holy Paladin is like Mage, Rogue, Vengeance, DH, and then of course Warlock, and then like a lot of the priests are doing like Survival, Warlock, and then DH or Rogue or something. I can't really remember. But there's a good amount of like diversity absolutely everywhere. I really do like that so far there's 4 different healers in the top 5. Like I said, I feel like this happens a lot though at the beginning of the season, where we see this kind of diversity in the top 5, and then like we saw this at the beginning of like Shadowlands season 1. It's like, oh, there's
we
a
had
bunch of Resto Shamans, and then like
the pink plague,
and then like the pink plague happened and stuff like that, So it's usually how it ends up going, but I hope it doesn't end up that direction. So far, I'm pretty happy with it. Other than our poor Mistweavers, of course. God, we miss them.
They got to be the worst healer for Mythic Plus by like a decent margin right now, right?
I think
that this priest maybe might be the worst, but I definitely think that Mistweaver is better than Disc Priest, because but I might be wrong.
There's Disc Priest is that you can respect a holy.
Yeah.
It's the strong advantage of Disc Priest.
Okay, so there's
3600 is not bad.
Yeah, okay. It is not a lot of Mistweavers though gracing our top 100. Is one, which is I don't know, buff Mistweaver.
Where's the second one?
Where is the next Mistweaver? Okay, there. 210, rank 210 at 35.55.
Yeah,
Playing
so
Alliance
Meg
though, so that's extra handicap, right? You got to factor that in.
Meg was 3,600, so I guess
Yeah.
it's pretty good.
Yeah. But buff Mistweaver for sure. In key, I don't know how you buff them because like they're already. I mean, you could probably buff them a little bit for raid as well, but not too much, right? They're already good in raid this tier.
There are some pretty easy fixes I think that they could do that wouldn't affect them in raid. I think, yeah, anything involving spinning crane kick and giving that some kind of synergy, like the other healers have, like really like them. I think their main problem is they don't have anything passive. Like Paladin puts on consecrate, Holy Priest has dots, Disc has dots, Residue has dots, Twisted Shaman has dots, and they all have these big like covenant abilities that do damage for the most part. They all have access to one. The super has none of those things I just mentioned.
Do you not classify Mystic Touch then as like?
No, well, that is passive damage. However, is it enough to fill the gap?
No, okay, no, but no, but no.
I like the idea of spinning crane kick, yeah, because like that's something you don't press too much in raid. Whereas if you buffed Mystic Touch, we would have a problem in raid for sure.
I don't know what's shocking, but Mystic Touch is very fine.
All right, how about how's the seasonal affix felt? I'm not just also encrypted, but like compared to Prideful and Tormented, like the whole expansion for healers. How have you been feeling this season about the shift to encrypted?
It is. Yeah, I like it a lot better. I like it a lot better. It's a little bit toxic though when your group just keeps killing by and getting a lady with a gun and she's shooting you down. But other than that, like getting is really good. I think for getting like your full mana back. I do wish there's some dungeons where the way they like halls and miss, I think it's really awkward how they have them spread out. Whereas in other dungeons, it's like really consistent that you're running into them every few packs. Like miss and halls are both like not like that at all, at least with the current routing you do. But yeah, I think it feels a lot better, and I don't really have that many complaints about it, except for when my group doesn't kill her. Then I'm really upset because I'm like, okay, I move. Gosh darn it.
The new seasonal affix, it gives mana back whenever you kill one of the
Dreadlords, true.
Disguised mobs, right?
Okay,
yeah,
nice.
Gives you a little I think 30%, 35% mana bump, so not bad. Don't mind if we do. The mini boss gives even more as well.
Is it? I mean, should the it's not like, oh, they should definitely not be giving mana back. Is mana really the solution for like the buff that healers should always be getting? Should they always just be getting mana back from every?
You also get
seasonal
stats, but every time you kill the mob, you get some mana. I like it.
Yeah. I saw like JB put out a tweet. I think it was yesterday. He's like, oh, maybe if we're constantly having to like put mana regen into the affix, maybe that says something about mana regen and we should fix it. Which I think is like a problem because you don't really want that in raid. Like in raid, like, having to like manage your mana is part of the mechanic, and if you buff mana regen, it's gonna affect raid. But yeah, I do think it's the buff that most healers want. They've like throughout, like at the beginning of the expansion, wasn't such a big deal, but like throughout the expansion, they've made like classes that used to be mana efficient, like Holy Paladin, they've made a lot of their abilities cost more mana and stuff like that. And then just like the way they've kind of been like moving in the direction of the healers, I think pretty much every healer, not so much Holy Priest. I don't think Holy Priest has that many mana problems. Resto Shaman doesn't as well unless you're like spamming a lot and stuff like that. For the most part, you can play around it, but it's always nice to have. And I do agree, like they can do something else in addition to mana, but mana should definitely always be there unless they want to give us back like Fish Feast or something. It is so toxic to be like, okay, let's pause for 10 seconds and all sit and all drink. And like that feels so awful as a healer because then your whole group hates you, basically.
Do you think that like there is something lost skill-wise by not having like mana management in that regard? Or do you think that it's just one of those things that it's not really that interactive with the dungeon, it doesn't matter that much, you should just have more, at least in Mythic Plus specifically, more mana regen, or like maybe like Fish Feasts or something like that?
Yeah, so I think like there should be boss fights in Mythic Plus where you have to manage your mana and you have to like be like really aware of it and stuff like that. But I don't think it should be like, oh, we're chain pulling and I have to make my group stop chain pulling because even though like my tank has survivability, we have the DPS, we have everything we need, I just don't have enough mana. So that's what I don't like. I just think it's just not a fun mechanic. Like,
yeah,
at
sure.
the end of the day, it's just not fun. Like I think that it's okay to have like boss fights that are hard to get through because you have to like think about managing it. But other than that, I don't think the whole dungeon should be like, oh, I can't spam this here, do this here because like I have to save my mana for the next pack and stuff like that. I don't think, yeah. Most
Sure.
of these dungeons, you aren't dropping combat, especially since they added Spiteful this season. That's way too toxic. Like,
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's a good point. Counterpoint,
Yeah.
Mother Load. Just keep pulling anyways. Doesn't
Mhm.
really matter if your healer has mana. Just keep pulling.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully we're getting Shadow Meld soon. And
That's
we
what I was
won't
about to say,
have
yeah.
much.
Real.
The old meld drink. I think it's
Yeah.
going to be very real, and depending on future seasonals, as like a thing you can do. If you can still, I don't know if you're going to be able to farm Mythic raid on cross faction right off the bat. That's the thing they haven't told us yet. Is like, what's the deal with Mythic raid and cross faction? But once we know about that, like if I can swap alliance once I've cleared the raid and be alliance for the rest of the season and raid and key, I probably will. I mean, Dwarf's OP, Night Elf's OP.
Yeah.
The old Meldy Res also quite
Big move.
OP.
So good.
Yeah.
Hero plays. Definitely the biggest thing I switched, like I missed when I switched from Alliance was that I couldn't just like meld and drink, and that was really hard to get used to, like having to tell people like, okay, we need to stop. We need to pause.
Dude, I gotta drink. You gotta chill.
Yeah, I just think it's a fun mechanic. I hope that they either add fish feast back or they keep adding something that allows us to regen mana, because mana is designed, I think, with raid in mind and not with a 30-minute dungeon in mind as far as like how fast it regens. So
Okay.
I don't think it's a good way
That's
to fill
fair.
in that gap.
How have you been enjoying the trade-off in terms of like deciding how much to do DPS versus healing this season? You've been pushing as Resto Shaman. Has that been a fun thing in dungeons, or has it been? You mentioned mana problems if you were spamming. Is that like does that come in the DPS side of things as well?
It depends on the build you're playing with Resto Shaman, but I think it's so hard. So I think this season has a lot more emphasis on survivability than damage than it has in the past. Like I said, a lot of the keys that I see being like untimed, or the keys that I've been untimed, it's never like, wow, we played this clean and we just didn't have enough damage. It's just like people are dying into like one-off things most of the time. And so sometimes it is better to play safer. Now, playing safer doesn't always mean like you doing a lot of healing, because a lot of these things are like kind of hard to heal through at the end of the day once you start getting into high tyrannical keys. The only like dungeons where there's really like healing checks anymore are like Sanguine Depths, and dungeons that used to have healing checks like Kolthorok and Devos no longer have those, because you don't have a warlock in your group all the time. So a lot of like the big scary things that we used to have no longer exist, because I think those were maybe the five, like the 3 bosses in Sanguine Depths, Devos, and then like there's some like single target healing you have to do inside of Spires on the middle 2 bosses, and then Kolthorok are probably like the only healing checks throughout this whole expansion, which kind of sucks and it's really boring compared to BFA in my opinion. Yeah, so like damage doesn't matter as much. You mostly just want to focus on being able to survive, but damage of course helps. Like kill the boss before it kills you is always going to be good, but I don't think it's like the same as it's been in the past, where you really did need like the Ashen Hollow and stuff like that to time a key.
How? Okay, so this is weird because I get most of my enjoyment from like doing trash in Mythic Plus. Like obviously as a DPS, and I think probably as the tank role, like most of the enjoyment in dungeons comes from like doing big pulls and doing trash. Is healing not like that? Do you actually get most of your enjoyment out of like hard to heal bosses?
I mean, not always. I don't like healing unnecessary damage, but I do like when a boss is purposely hard and everyone respects the boss for being hard, and then you heal it. So
Okay.
yeah. So like sometimes like with some of the most fun healer moments are maybe like the gauntlet inside of Sanguine Depths. That is actually a really fun healer moment to me, because you're doing damage and also like a lot of healing. Especially since the gauntlet is a lot harder now that you can't dodge the bleed anymore. That place gets really toxic sometimes. But yeah, I think it just depends. Like most of the time, if you're taking unnecessary or unfair damage that you're making me heal, then I'm not going to enjoy it. But when it's like expected healing, like we used to have like with like Galv and Kragma and stuff like that, I think that healers do actually, like they're scared of it and they're nervous about it because they don't want you to die. But at the end of the day, that is what you get the most enjoyment from as a healer, is having those moments that make you feel alive. Like we said before, like I want to feel something when I do that.
Just trying to feel something.
Yeah, I'm just trying to feel something.
Yeah, because we were talking, Tettles, you and I were talking with Growl the other day about this, and he was saying Sanguine Depths was his favorite dungeon this expansion, like for the reason of boss fights that make me heal something, and I assume makes him feel alive as well. I'm inferring there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. There's nothing else like Halls, Plaguefall. I mean, Plaguefall's like all right, but honestly, not even crazy anymore. I'm gonna be honest.
I feel like
Like
the
a lot of
bosses kill you on Plaguefall because you screw up, right? It's not like
yeah,
it's not
you
like
just
healing. Yeah.
it's like everybody has you just saying like okay, you cloak here, you wall here, all the spell here, like this here, like and like you just plan out your CDs so that most of the time you're only having to spam like one person at a time, maybe two people at a time, but it's like never crazy unless it gets like you fall behind or something like that, and then it goes from being like oh, okay, I can heal these people to just being unhealable. Usually when that happens on a high enough keep where you mess up that way, and so that's not very fun. That's not very fun at all. Yeah, that's
I think part of
majority of it.
I think that part of this too is like we're doing really high level keys. Like our damage has scaled substantially higher due to like the 4 sets plus the double legendary, to where we are definitely reaching those points where survivability is an issue. But then you also have things such as pod tender, warlocks actually just being warlocks, like that kind of stuff, keeping classes alive even through unhealable levels of damage, which I think was more of an issue in Raid than it was necessarily Mythic Plus, but it also can certainly still be a thing for Mythic Plus.
Yeah, I like to think about because like we got a similar power spike in season 4 of BFA, and that's where you saw at the beginning, like we saw people wearing like Ineffable Truth, Gushing Wound, like Haste Corruption and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then like halfway through the season, you saw this big shift where everybody just started wearing First Corruption to live. But like that's not something that we're gonna hit this season because we don't have something like that. We can't slot something in to give it and give up damage to go and do that survivability. And so that's what people are thinking about. Like, are we gonna hit that point again where we don't have like a switch, which is where it is maybe possible for Holy Paladin to start doing really well, just because they do have things that allow themselves and others to live better than other healers do. So
Yeah.
things like that could happen. I'm not good enough at math to know, but like it could happen.
Yeah, I the season 4 BFA, you know, when it started out and everybody was like, "Oh, Twilight Dev, oh,
Yeah.
there's so much damage. Oh, Hunters,
was good.
BM Hunters," and then me and Tettles, we started the Dratno Shots Petals rivalry, and then all of a sudden we're getting those like 26, 27 keys and like, oh, King Mechagon is kind of a worrisome danger. I don't know how to live this. The last boss of Toldagor.
Demon hunters with full versatile corruption because they live.
I was putting on like Avoidance 6 on my hunter, trying to live that last boss of Toldagor. It was rough.
I had my hunter still has 70 versatility gems in its bag right now.
A crazy time to be alive.
Might need those again soon. But yeah, I'm not sure what direction it's gonna go in. I'm excited to see if also like I don't fully buy the hunter meta. They actually are quite a bit tankier than I expected.
The leech pet that Serve runs, is really nice.
Yeah, and of course having the Feign conduit and stuff like that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where the meta goes. But
is it not just double Destro? Is that not the meta?
I don't think there's not enough stops is the problem. Like you start running out of like ways to control the pack when you have double Destro. In my opinion, when you do that, when I was like watching people play double Destro, it was just like things would just start like cascading to like Fiesta pretty quickly as soon as things start going off. So, but it could happen. Could definitely be a thing.
Yeah, that's part of what I'm excited about for next season is like we kind of get versatile back for the end of these dungeons, or for like because you just can take the verse and stack it on up to huge amounts of verse, and maybe that'll just kind of fundamentally change how that ratio of like survivability to damage that we have in these dungeons.
Serve also doesn't hate versatility. Like they could reasonably take the
anything but mastery. Yeah, they're all about it.
Yeah.
Whereas because BM Hunter in BFA season 4 versatility was like hot garbage, right?
Yeah, it was really bad. Like with Serve right now, you could reasonably take the versatility and be okay. It's their second best stat.
All right, well, this has been a really cool discussion. I want to get to some Q&A though, so before we run too long. So let's move on over to those. But first, we have to thank our supporters over on the Patreon. Thanks for supporting the show. We're sorry we missed last week as well. They are Paul, Riley, my new spirit animal is the Ducks from 10.0, Ja, Dratnos' Dino Pillow, Chromed, Trekkie, Never Nude, Chewy. Think People Think. If you time a plus 30 this week, you're telling Blizzard the necrotic affix is okay, which that was from the necrotic week. Yeah. ZivXX, Salty Senny, Necris, Sinmora, Tankdill, Nevuk, Bread Ceratops, Eevee, Survival Main, No Trick, I Scheduled a Tettle's Flame, Dymat, Lufer, Rip Wow Up, Nyx, Delete Gaming, Gallic, Brusif, Dratner's Routes Abyss, no, Tettle's Routes Abyss, Mzanity, Xena, Rogue is now good enough for Prog, still bad enough to be sat for SLG, bless up, Red Color, youtube.com/workbringer, Alphabet Soup, Druid Friends of Evolved Gaming, number one Simsky for Trelsky, Lurka got his golden rabbit out of mists, now he won't stop talking about being a magician. Remind him that mages don't cast chain lightning. Golden rabbit out of mists. Does anybody know what that means? A golden rabbit out of mists. Is there a pet or something? Okay, I've never seen that.
It's not a changeling, right?
Oh, could
I
be.
think so.
If it's a changeling, it could be anything, so it could be a rabbit.
It could be a golden rabbit even.
I got flamed for not interrupting an Arathi Basin comp stomp. Milk, 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 milk. Benil, aka YOLO Swag Crew. Sife, Pone. Windwalker monks deal with nerfs by rolling with the punches. Due to Sims with 4-piece, Skelly will now be going back to Elemental from Enhance. Dosegni, making more Vamp kids than Twilight. Vamp kid, okay. Someone's going to need to explain this one to me as well.
Okay, so Dosegni, you have to go either Fae or Venthyr on the boss because of the beams.
Okay, to get over the beams.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it.
So you're going Necrolord, and it's going to make you more goth than the Twilight series did whenever
You're going
I
Venthyr.
was
Okay,
growing up. Because I know you're old, but whenever I was growing up,
Oh no, I was a fan of Twilight.
in school. No,
Yeah.
no, you were. You're old.
No, I was a fan of Twilight. That was a good show. That show got unnecessary hate. That was it was a good time.
Uh-huh.
All right, let's move on to Q&A. Our first question comes from Simf in Discord, who says, "As a DPS player that wants to mess around with healing, I have two main questions and issues. So we'll tackle these one by one. The first one is, how do you pick a spec or class if you have very little healing experience? Because you're at this point a pretty seasoned healer multi-classer, but if you were somebody who wanted to get into it, how would you choose from the 6 that there are?"
Well, if you want to get into it and you were worried because you were nervous about getting into it because you didn't know what to do, you'd pick the easiest one. It just so happens that the easiest one right now is also the most powerful one in every single realm of content, so you should play a Holy Priest. There is nothing else you should do. That is it. Normally you'd be like, okay, what's easy, what's good, maybe I find an in-between. But luckily right now there's absolutely no thought process, just make a Holy Priest.
Yeah, I love this answer because people ask us about tanking, and I'm always like, well, Guardian is the simplest, but if you're trying to get invited to stuff, maybe. But yeah, with healing, there's the two things point in the same direction.
Yeah, I used to always answer like, well, the easiest one is this. However, Holy Paladin is really good at everything, so maybe you do that, or you pick an in between, like Resto Druid or Resto Shaman, if which you find in everything. But yeah, right now it's just all signs point to Holy Priest, so just make that thing.
So what's the difference between reactive and proactive healers? Because sometimes Resto Druid is super meta, right? And Resto Druid and Disc heal very different than, at least in general, Holy Paladin, H Priest, Mistweaver, right?
So Disc Priest and Resto Druid are more bursty with their healing, and you do have to do kind of a ramp to know that you're healing is you have to know when you're gonna need to do healing. You don't just have an oh shit button that's just gonna do all of your healing for you if something goes wrong. And so when unpredictable damage starts happening is when you start having this panic because you don't have all of your hots out, or you don't have your ramp out, and you don't have your CDs or anything to deal with it. And then more reactive healers, I don't know if I'd really call Mistweaver a super reactive healer right now. They definitely have this a steady state of healing right now, and they don't have that many CDs. And then Holy Priest, as long as you're keeping up your stacks and stuff like that, you could basically do healing anytime. And they have really short CD windows. Same thing with Resto Shaman. They have some CDs, but their CDs aren't the major part of their kit that do damage. Both those healers just have healing bombs that they can just put into someone and basically top a group with it. So you and you don't have to know the damage is coming to start doing that healing for the most part. Priest, you do have to maintain your stacks. For Resto Shaman, you really don't have to know. You can know, and you can have a cloud burst down, and that helps. But you also have the ability to just catch up a group when something just starts going haywire. And you have things that kind of triage heal, a Spirit Link Totem and stuff like that. And then Resto Druid, you can just press Trank or something. But for the most part, if you want to do a big healing ramp, you have to know ahead of time that you need to do that in order to make it actually worthwhile. Same thing with Disc. And then Holy Paladin, it's kind of reactive right now, I would say.
It goes through phases.
Yeah.
It goes through phases.
Yeah. I mean, like you have like when you're playing Necrolord, you have 2 charges of your hammer, and they're recharging every 30 seconds. They do a ton of healing. You're mostly reactive right now, especially with how often you get wings back. Maybe that wasn't always true, but like the meta right now, yeah. So it's just like, do you have to have stuff going? Do you have to get stuff rolling in order to start doing big healing, or can you just start spending your most like abilities, even if they're mana inefficient, to top a group if you need to? Is kind of the difference.
Makes sense.
All right, then their next question, part 2, was how do you learn how to heal besides, you know, keybinds and stuff? Feels like I'm on the verge of wiping my group every pull. It's very scary since there's no real rotation, unlike a DPS, right? I get lost.
Yeah, so the main thing about healers is that you don't have a rotation. You usually just have a spell priority, and you have things that usually you're like, oh, you want to keep this on CD. So on Wowhead, a lot of like guides usually have some have a rotation, but a lot of them do. Like when you look at like Windwalker and stuff like that, there's like, oh, you just have a priority of like spells that you want to hit first and things that you need to keep up and stuff like that. So you mostly want to look at that and learn like what your most like powerful like healing CDs are and stuff like that. If you need to be keeping something on the tank the whole time, like an Earth Shield or like Life Bloom or something like that, or you need to maintain stacks on like a Holy Priest. So basically learning that. The other 2 things that are really key is that you like healing comes with time. You need to learn like when you're expecting damage and learn how to predict that damage and know where it is and save your stuff for it and be ready for it. And so that you kind of just have to keep running keys and pay attention to where you're dying and what they're dying to know when you need to do that kind of damage. And then the other part that's really important is you need to have a good UI. Like a good UI as a healer is really important. You'll be able to see debuffs, CDs that people are using. And when I say CDs, I mostly mean like their defenses and stuff like that is also really important. But yeah, you have to run a lot of keys or do a lot of raid bosses. And for raid bosses, you need to like we talked about before, look at VODs to learn about where the damage is coming from, and look at logs to predict and know where the damage is going to come from in order to get better at it. And then just know, yeah, you can. It's not like because most DPS, when you're learning as a DPS, people say, yeah, I'm learning as a DPS. So you went and found the best log, you looked at their opener and everything they did, and then you just copied that. Like that's never gonna work as a healer.
Yeah.
It's not gonna do anything for you. But you can do something similar during ramp times, or like when there's like a lot of damage going out and seeing what they're pressing and how they're pressing it and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but
like,
it's a bit more in depth than DPS.
Like Disc Priest on a raid fight, like you could kind of lift like, okay,
Yeah,
2 minutes, 18
you can.
seconds, I start my ramp, you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, most of the other parts of the game, I agree. I will say, as a DPS, when I was DPSing, there were multiple fights where I did have a notepad document with not the abilities in the order I was going to cast them, but actually my keybinds in the order I was going to press them. Whenever I was playing a new spec for some boss.
This?
Yeah, well, this was like I was playing Subtlety on Zul. I hadn't played Subtlety before, and I just listed out the entire opener.
Subtlety on Zul.
The opener, I had to press my cooldowns, and I wanted to press them at the optimal times. Okay, I got rank 1 2 weeks in a row by doing this. It was it was a big move.
I can't believe you flamed me for the Demon Hunter rotation helper, and you had
It's a notepad. That's why you gotta have multiple monitors.
He at least had to memorize his instead of looking
eventually I had it in my head. Yeah, eventually I was able to close that, but yeah.
I hate to break it to you, Dratos, Zul was Shuriken Storm Eviscerate. And
not on pull. On pull, you had to like press Shadow Blade, you had to press Symbols of Death, you had to press these buttons, and if you pressed them at the wrong times, you were gonna lose damage. And I was not about that. I was trying to kill the boss.
For those who don't know, you only had to press Shadow Blades and Symbols of Death, and then you press Shuriken Storm and Eviscerate.
Well, the order, and you had to wait for the ads to spawn as well. There were no ads for a bit at the start, so you had to cast your other buttons.
The trade as well, yeah, of course.
That's true. How else am I going to know this if I don't have a notepad document?
Yeah, shit. Okay, so I have a question. Sometimes people will talk about like letting a tank or a DPS, or like letting their DPS die to be able to save their tank. Is that also something that just comes with experience and like watching your tank CDs, like knowing that they don't have like Vamp Blood, Runic Power, and stuff like that, knowing that they need immense help?
I think, yeah, that also brings something else. You have to know who to prioritize when you're healing. A thing that I did at the beginning when I first started healing, and I had to learn this the hard way, is that I would often be like, I can live this, I'm going to heal the DPS, and then I would die. And then we would wipe, because you, the healer, die. And that's going to be a wipe every time. So sometimes you really have to learn, prioritize yourself, prioritize your tank, especially in keys, you have to prioritize your tank, because as soon as your tank dies, all those mobs are going to turn around and hit your DPS, and that's like the worst thing that can happen, is that it's just immediately going to be a wipe most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you do got to learn, like, to know like when your tank needs the attention, Like, so most of the time, the priority goes your tank and kind of yourself at the same time, because if you die, they're probably going to die, and then your DPS. Even though they're like yelling because they're dying or whatever, you do gotta like know who is the most important people in this poll. It's also like knowing like, okay, my fire mage is going to carry this poll, and this person has like no DPS CDs up. They're both dying. Who do I heal? It's the one that has the CDs up that's going to carry the poll for you. So that is something that's a bit more. I really wouldn't worry about that when you're first learning to heal, but like the further along you get, learning that kind of thing is important. Of course, in the instance I just said, the fire mage does have blocks, so sometimes you choose to heal the other one, hoping they'll block, and they don't. But like, you do have to think about these kinds of things. Like, this person has this to save them, this person has that to save them, and
yeah, if you're like tracking their defensives, right? Which we talked about being something you should add to your UI. Yeah, one thing
yes.
I noticed playing with you as well is that you will say like idiot cloak, right, or something like that. Like hit that Barkskin, right? Barkskin right now.
Idiot cloak.
That was when I was playing Croak. Yeah.
I will say the idiot part, but yeah, like some when you get to a high enough point, healers will start calling defenses, especially like on a fight like Barilla in Sanguine Depths. It's really important that you as a healer, or even the first boss in Sanguine Depths, you as a healer know like you have to plan out your immunes, you have to plan out your defensives on that kind of fight, and that's the kind of fight that feels like you can make a spreadsheet just like you do for raid for that fight. I know when we were doing like the Great Push, that's something that I was doing. That you do have to like actually like plan out CDs on certain fights, and most of the time that does involve you telling your DPS like cloak this, and then we're going to turtle the next one and stuff like that. Is really important to know that like your DPS have those CDs available, and that you plan things out that way, and that you like react to who you heal based on who has what. So yeah, that's a bit more advanced, but like once you get used to like knowing where the damage is and how much healing you need just to live in every single spot, it's something you want to do for sure.
Barilla and Galvast were definitely exceptions whenever you were like having to really plan out your CDs, though. I felt like, at least maybe you feel differently, but the immunity, like major defensive, I'm only going to take 2 stacks of the orb, or I'm not taking any stacks of the orb on Barilla specifically, feels like a weird one.
Yeah, I would like, if I was going to compare Barilla to a BFA boss, it would definitely be Cragmaw, because it's like that bursty kind of like healing type of thing where like this person uses defensive to live like this thing, whereas Galvaz was like way more like you're healing the entire time. And yeah, but like cloaks and stuff were important, especially like in season 2 and stuff, like when you actually had to sit down and AFK for 10 seconds to have a sleepy pot in order to get through that fight.
I remember this, dude. That
for red essences, that was so bad.
I remember just watching people.
Proc your Ashara staff here, please, so that we can get some.
No, I don't want a Ashara staff here. I would like to Ashara staff on the last boss and blow it up.
Not allowed. I need it here.
Wait.
So that was a good one back then. But yeah, stuff like that, like it was way more prevalent in BFA, and there's a lot less examples of it now than there was then. It used to be a thing on Devos as well, like telling your DPS like you need to cloak or block this one, especially when like a debuff was going to overlap with the barrier thing. But like I said, now we play Warlocks, and that boss isn't a boss anymore. So.
Yeah, having an extra dispel is really, really fake on that fight.
Yeah, we lost 2 of the like 2 of the 5 healing bosses this tier, and now the only 3 that are left are all inside of Sanguine Depths. All because of Warlock.
We do hate them.
Yeah, we do. I mean, I love them. I hated healing that fight, but also we hate them.
Real.
All right, next question touches on a couple things we already mentioned a little bit, but just quickly, do you think every healer should get a Discipline Holy Paladin mechanic to even out M+ balance via damage, or can you suggest another way to make Mistweaver see the inside of keys? So this, I think when they say Disc or Holy Paladin, I think they mean like having damage dealing be part of your healing rotation rather than like the damage reduction side of things, since this is M+ oriented.
Okay. I'm gonna try not to be. I'm gonna say this nicely. I think that's very wrong. I think that if you had said that about Resto Shaman or Resto Druid or Holy Priest, I would have agreed. However, right now Mistweaver is definitely doing damage to do all their healing. Not all their healing, but a lot of their healing, because they're playing Ancient Teachings. So they are, and also they play Rising Mist, so they're extending all of their hots whenever they hit Rising Sun Kick. Whenever they hit the Rising Sun Kick or they hit Blackout Kick, that is directly doing healing, and that's what Mistweavers are playing. So, no.
So it's something else is the way to
damage they're dealing or something?
Yeah, to make Mistweaver see the inside of keys, first off, they need to have like guys. I mentioned this a little bit ago, but like every other healer has some form of a big damage button or a passive damage button, like as in like they're doing dots, or they have a Vesper Totem, or they're pressing Boon, or they have Ashen Hollow, or Convoke isn't really that much. I'm gonna be honest, but Residue does have like a lot of dots to do passive damage. Whereas like right now, the only way Mistweavers can do damage is yes, they put up Mystic Touch, but other than that, in order to do damage in AoE packs, they have to just keep pressing Spinning Crane Kick and keep putting all of their globals into that. And unlike other healers that have synergies with like their DPS buttons, there's no synergy at all with their best damage button. And so whenever they're doing that, they're having to stop damaging completely in order to start healing. The idea that I had was if they would just put, because like back when they had Way of the Crane, it's very similar to Ancient Teachings, except Way of the Crane increased your damage, and it also included Spinning Crane Kick. If they would just put Spinning Crane Kick inside of Ancient Teachings, it would just solve the problem. like they would get to spend a lot more time doing damage, and like that would fix it. So, but yeah, they just need either some kind of like passive damage dot, because every other healer has one, whether that be like Consecrate or actual dots, or they just need some kind of like synergy there for them in keys. Because right now in Raid, they do really good damage. Like they do really good single target damage. It's kind of like similar to like where Holy Paladin Disc is, where it's a high floor, low ceiling, where like just by doing the rotation, they're already doing a lot of damage. They can't go that much higher than that, but it's still really good, consistent damage. But they struggle with that in keys because you don't want to press Tiger Palm on single target. Like it's just not nearly as good.
Well, I mean, you're also not going to compete with a Vesper Totem, Deep Tremor, Resto Shaman, like that.
All these things that don't require
as an early shaman player. Like,
yeah.
All these other things don't require, like either they don't require you to stop healing, or they don't require you to stop healing for that long. Like with like Boon, and obviously like PI is completely passive and things like that.
Yeah.
So they just need something that like just rounds out their kit a tiny bit.
Way the Crane back. So fucked up.
They need it back so fucking bad.
Except this time, make it not cost mana.
Okay.
It didn't cost mana. It's fine. It's honestly fine.
It was like 25% last expansion, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It was a lot, but it didn't matter because you didn't have to heal for 15 seconds. So it was like, it worked out. Yeah, and they don't have a DPS legendary. That's what Noctil said. Every other healer, the only DPS legendary that Mistweaver has access to is a 60-second reduction on Touch of Death. Or if they play Night Fae, they can make their Night Fae stomp do a bit more damage. But other than that, like their Covenants just don't do any damage, and they don't have access to any Lego that does damage, and every other healer does right now.
Even their Covenant legendary doesn't do damage because like H-Priest, they only have like the Kyrian legendary.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they like to run flash concentration.
Boon does a lot of damn.
Yeah, Boon does do a lot of damn.
Yeah, with the especially, the synergy there is really good with Boon right now. They do have like they have one that buffs their Fae Stomp, Phaeline Stomp, or whatever, which is like when I was playing with Super Season 1, I used to play Fae. But it just increases the effectiveness of it, so it makes them take more damage. So then if you put on a damage trinket, it does a bit more damage, but it's still like not. This server is actually, I think it's in a good spot. It's just not as good as others. Like it's not tragic. It's definitely not tragic. It's definitely playable. It's just like the others definitely have a leg up. Like
seems reasonable.
It's okay.
I feel like that's Prop Warrior sort of feeling that way as well, where it's like it's actually kind of good right now. It's just like everything else is much gooder.
Yeah.
Dude, I think Bear has actually slid down to probably be the worst tank right now.
Bear is down awful, I think.
Yeah. Dude, Bear after the 2 sets of 4-set nerf,
down tremendous.
Down bad.
Yeah.
Bear.
Have you guys seen Prop Warrior damage in Phase 4 Jailer? Have you seen those logs?
My God.
Yeah.
It's literally their top DPS. So, dude, like, what the hell is that spec?
It's so good.
Execute. Kind of cool.
Holy shit.
All right, well, I think that's it for our questions today. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Corey May. I think it's really interesting to hear all about healers and stuff. Again, Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, all the places, just the username that you got, Corey May. So pretty easy to find, right? Cool. Yeah, that's going to be it for us this week. We'll be back next week with another one, hopefully. Later, everybody.
I think we will.
Have a good day, guys.
Goodbye.
Bye.